Hello, everyone. I'm going to walk you through things you need to know to create and save a Pro Tools project. We're going to get started by opening up Pro Tools. Generally, you'll open up Pro Tools and it will open up to the dashboard. In this area here where it says name, what you're doing is you're naming the session that you're about to open, but you're also naming the folder that the session file and all its components are being saved into, all the subfolders. So I'm just going to name this PA1 and I'm going to write my last name. Then I'm going to make note of the location that this is going to be saved to. Now, this could be anywhere. It could be on an external drive. It could be on the desktop of a computer. So I'm going to choose location. And for this purpose, I'm just going to save it on the desktop. But, you could save it on an external drive. Okay, hit open. Okay, so now notice that the description here, or the file path, has changed because I clicked on that button and I selected the desktop so I could see its users, Frank Natter desktop. It will obviously look different for you depending on where you choose. Make note of these things here. These will be important eventually. These are different settings for sample rate and bit depth, which we will discuss later. For now, just hit create. Okay, so now one thing I want to do before I go any further is I want to just kind of move these windows a little bit out of the way. So I chose to save my session folder on the desktop, and you can see that Pro Tools created it right here under the name that I made. Okay. Also, you notice that it opened up to two windows. I think some of you may see something a little bit more like this when it opens. It will be different after you use it a little bit. But like some of you see something like this that opens. It has a mix window and it has an edit window. Now, once you're using it, presumably both of these will be kind of expanded. And actually, you can hit Command equals to put one on top and send the other to the back when you're working between the two windows, okay? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to add a MIDI instrument track, and you'll see in the list it's just called an instrument track. And we're also going to add an audio track to our session. Okay, so this is how we go about doing that. Now, when I'm adding tracks, you could do this in either the edit window view or the mix window view. But I tend to like to do it in the mix window because the mix window lays out in a way that looks similar to a mixing board. So I hit my Command equals to get the mix window on top, and then I'm going to go up to my track menu and I'm going to select new, and then we get this dialog box, this new tracks dialog box. There's some options here. It asks us how many tracks do we want to create. At this point, we're just going to create one, but you could in one swoop create multiple tracks if that's what you wanted to do. Next is asks us if we want the track we're about to create to be stereo or mono. Now, generally, or for the most part, you're going to be creating mono tracks that ultimately will be mixed to stereo left and right in the final mix. But when you actually insert a track, a lot of the time, most of the time, they're going to be mono tracks. So for now, we're going to use mono. Okay, but you can see there's other options. The two most important are mono and stereo. And then the next drop-down menu we get is what type of track are we trying to insert here. So the two that are going to be very important to us, the ones we're going to be working with pretty much exclusively, are the audio track and the instrument track. Now, let me just say something here. An instrument track is actually a MIDI track, okay? So right above instrument track, you see in this drop-down menu is something called a MIDI track, and that is very confusing. The difference between the two is that the instrument track is set up to use instruments or virtual instruments that are already installed into your Pro Tools program. The MIDI track is more open-ended, and things are not necessarily hooked up. It's there so you can use it to control other MIDI devices and external things. We are going to be sticking with audio tracks and instrument tracks. Remember, an instrument track is actually a MIDI track, okay? So let's just create that one first. So I'm going to click on instrument track. Here, Tix samples, it just defaulted to Tix. That's fine. Here, you could actually name it whatever you want. Because I chose an instrument track, the default is INST for instrument. If I know exactly what I'm going to be putting on this track, I could name it something more specific. But for this purpose, I'm just going to leave it to that default instrument, or INST, and hit create. Okay, so now we can see in our mix window, indeed, a track was created. Now, we could do exactly the same thing to create an audio track, okay? So I'm going to click on the track menu. I'm going to click New, okay? And I'm going to, leave it at 1. I'm going to leave it at mono. But here, instead of clicking instrument track, I'm going to leave it on audio track, which it seems to default to. That's fine. I'm going to leave this at samples. Before the MIDI track defaulted to Tix, and the audio track defaults to samples. That's fine. And like the default name is audio, but again, I could name it vocals or guitar or anything that I'm recording, or if there was a pre-recorded audio file that I'm trying to import into Pro Tools, I can name it more specifically based on whatever that file is. Okay, so I'm just going to hit create as is here. All right, so now I have 2 tracks. Now this one is my instrument track, ready to receive a virtual instrument. And this one is my audio track, ready to receive input from a microphone, or ready to receive some pre-recorded audio clips. Okay, so it's always important to save along the way. Every time you do a new step, you want to go up to this file menu, drop it down, click save, okay? I'm going to do that right now. My project was saved. Next, I just want to demonstrate something about the way Pro Tools stores the information in the session folder. So you can see over here on the side here, this is the session folder. Now, Pro Tools is open. I just hit save. If I were to click on this, we could see its contents. Okay, so Pro Tools is open right now, and you can see inside this folder that it created earlier, we have another folder, a subfolder that says audio files. We have a subfolder that says bounce files. We have a subfolder that says clip groups. We have the .ptx file that actually is the Pro Tools session file that we would click on to open this particular session. Then below that, we have a session file backups folder. We have a video files folder. You might not see that. But these are all the things that Pro Tools created when we created the session earlier. Now, at the moment, there's nothing recorded into Pro Tools. So if I were to expand this or double click it, you could see there's nothing in this audio files because no audio has been recorded at the moment. Bounced is the word for when you export audio, export something that you were working on, and you could tell it to save to this bounce files folder. And again, nothing has been exported, so there is nothing in there. And you can see all these other things, are storing different information that Pro Tools needs to save. So when you reopen Pro Tools, the information is there, okay? Now, check this out. Nothing is really recorded or done yet. We just basically created this session and created 2 tracks. Pro Tools is open, okay? Oops, let me just bring that back. Okay, so that's what's in it right now. Now, if I were to go to Pro Tools, if I were to close this Pro Tools session, and I could do that by just coming over here. I mean, again, every time I do something, I always hit save. I hit save again. Why not? All right. If I were to quit Pro Tools under the Pro Tools menu, It's going to close Pro Tools. Okay. Now, okay, let me just make this less confusing here. Oops, don't worry about that. Now, if I were to reopen this session folder and examine its contents, notice now that Pro Tools is closed, the only thing that's in that folder is the .ptx file, which again is what we would click on to reopen that session, and a session backups folder. Now, oh, look at this. This is a nice thing. I told you before to always hit save, 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 save. Pro Tools also, on top of you manually saving, is set to automatically save and make some backups as you work. Now, you can change the frequency of that. The more you do it, the more this folder here will get really big. But notice that's the only thing that's in here. It's just the session file and a folder for all the automatic backups that look like they're happening pretty frequently here, right? Now, let me open the session again, and those other folders will come back. Okay, Pro Tools opened again. And now let me examine the contents of this session folder, and all those other things are back. Audio files, bounce files, clip groups, etc. Okay, but as soon as we actually record something into one of these folders, like as soon as there's some audio that gets saved in this audio files folder, for example, this audio files subfolder will remain in the session folder even after Pro Tools is closed. All right, but don't be alarmed at this point if this looks different when Pro Tools is open and different when it's closed. Okay. All right, just to drive that home a little bit, we'll just record some stuff into this instrument track, this virtual instrument track, and we'll record something into the audio track. So let's start by recording into the virtual instrument track. Okay, so first of all, we have to insert a virtual instrument into this track. There's nothing in it right now. So to do that, you might notice there's the word inserts, and there's some empty boxes. To insert something into one of those empty spots, empty slots, we just click on that slot, and then you get a menu, and there's a bunch of things in here, but what we're concerned with is this thing called plugin, and then it opens up another menu, and we're going to scroll over or scroll down to instrument. Okay, now this list, and it's going to look different on your system because I have a lot of extra things installed on mine, but this is the list of virtual instruments, which are instrument sounds that are already installed into Pro Tools. So these are my choices for virtual instruments. So just to make this simple, I'm just going to choose MIDI Grand, which is one of the standard virtual instruments that comes with Pro Tools. And I'm going to click there, and you're going to see the virtual instrument will open. Here it is. And every virtual instrument will look different, depending on which one. But you can see that in that insert box, there is the words MIDI Grand. So we know that that instrument has been inserted into this track. Okay. Now, to actually record, we need to actually have an external MIDI controller, like a keyboard or something else. But if you actually don't have one, and this is what we're going to use right now, you can use a built-in kind of virtual MIDI controller. If you go to the Windows menu, you can choose MIDI keyboard. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to use these keys on your actual computer keyboard, like the keys A, W, S, E, D, etc., to play notes into Pro Tools and trigger the sounds of whatever the virtual instrument is that you have selected in your inserts, okay? So to record anything, actually, in this track, we have to record and enable it. We have to set it up ready to receive MIDI information, MIDI data from our controller, in this case, our virtual keyboard. So to do that, we have to click on this red button, and we see that now it's like, if I scroll over it, you see it says track record enable. So if the track record enable button is flashing, that track is ready to receive MIDI data. So presumably if I press any of these keys, right? I was doing it with the mouse, but I also can do it with the actual keyboard on my computer. Now it's just playing. Nothing was actually recording just then. To set up for a recording, let me just walk you through another thing here. I'm going to hit Command equals to get the edit window on top. You can reposition all these things. Matter of fact, this instrument, if I close it, it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to make the instrument disappear. It's just going to make it not show. If I want it to show again, here, let me just hit Command equals to go put the other window back on top. I just would click on this again and it comes back. And I can get rid of it. Click on it, oops, and it will come back. So there it's gone. Here it's back. Okay, no big deal if it disappears. You just click on it and it will come back. Okay, again, Command equals brings the edit window to the top. I'm going to just kind of move this little keyboard out of my way. All right. Now, this is not something you need to know for your production assignment 1, but in this window, now we will be able to see what we record. Okay, so in this window, we could see the tracks, and it makes it easy to insert something like a virtual instrument. But in the edit window, we'll see in a horizontal view of time, right? Here's a ruler that shows minutes and seconds and bars and beats. In a horizontal ruler of time, we will see what we actually record into this. And in this case, we're going to be recording MIDI data, okay? All right, so we're in record ready mode. We can see both windows have that red light flashing. And to actually record, what we're going to do is we are going to use this transport area in our edit window, and we are going to hit the red button here to record enable the session to record, not just the individual track, but the whole session to record. And that now is flashing. So we have the individual track flashing, and we have the transport record enable button flashing. To record, we hit play, and then we'll be ready to play into the track, okay? So I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to use this virtual keyboard just to capture a few notes. Good. Hit stop. Okay, now here you can see a little something. And there's a few things you can do. I could drag this, make that a little bigger if I want to. I could use these arrows over here to zoom horizontally, zoom in and out of the time. All right, so if I like hit this side, it's going to zoom in so I can see a little better what I created. So there is what I recorded. If I want to hear it back, I could rewind this back to the beginning by hitting this return to 0. I could also click on the ruler somewhere, right? And that will kind of set the cursor ready to go somewhere. And then if I want to hear, I hit play. And I'm not actually playing now, it's just playing back. There we go. So that was recording MIDI data into a virtual instrument track. Again, using one of the virtual instruments that comes with Pro Tools, in this case, the MIDI Grand plugin. Now, we're going to record some audio, okay? So let me just disable this one, so now it's not in record enable mode. Now, to get audio into a track, I have to be concerned with this area here. This I/O stands for input output. There's a menu right under the I/O icon that will allow me to choose the proper input channel of my audio interface. Now, all audio interfaces are slightly different, so this menu is going to look different depending on what audio interface you have plugged into your system, into your computer, and then, of course, into Pro Tools. In this case, I'm using a PreSonus audio interface. In the lab, there's the Scarlett. But in any case, I just have to choose one of the options I have in relation to that interface. So I'm just going to choose the channel 1, or the mic instrument line 1, mono. So I'm choosing that. And then I have to make sure that I plug a microphone into that same channel on the interface. In this case, it's just channel 1. Okay, so now that is selected. And I have to also record enable this track. Now, watch what happens when I record enable it. Okay, now you see signal, and you might even have heard the sound change a little bit, because now we have the sound going through Pro Tools as well. But you could see the signal when I speak, okay? So now to record this, it's basically the same procedure. We got signal. I'm going to hit Command equals to get to the other window. Okay, here I am in the edit window. This is record ready, record enabled. This is record enabled. Now to make sure that, well, actually, let me do this. Let me rewind the transport back to the beginning. Return to 0. Okay. Now that was this right here. Return to 0. Now I'm going to record enable the whole session, and then I should be able to make audio sound, recording into a microphone. Okay, so we have record enabled, and now I have to hit play, and it will start recording. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. That's audio and MIDI recorded. All right, let's rewind that, play it back, see if it worked. So I hit return to 0. I can hit the play button over here. And 1, 2, and there we go. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. That's audio and MIDI recorded. Okay, apparently that worked. Again, if this was something I was actually working on, now would be a great time to hit save, since I recorded some more stuff. Boom. Okay, so let's say I'm done with that track. I recorded everything I need. I can take the record enable off. And now I'm going to, I hit save. Right, I did. I'll do it again. And now I'm going to close Pro Tools, and we're going to look in the file, the session folder. I'm quitting Pro Tools. Okay, now let me open this, and let's examine what's inside. Okay, so now notice before we only saw this backup folder after we closed Pro Tools, but now we see the audio files folder with the audio that was just recorded, that I just recorded into the microphone. If I were to click on this, it probably was going to open in like Apple Music or something, the way my computer's set up. All right, let's see. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's actually the audio, that one track, that single track of audio that I recorded that's stored in this folder, okay? Notice that it was just the microphone, just the audio track, not the MIDI sound. The MIDI sound is only accessible through Pro Tools because the virtual instrument is creating the sound, and we didn't do anything but record the MIDI data into Pro Tools, and that MIDI data triggers the audio that the virtual instrument produces, but we didn't export that audio from the virtual instrument, okay? So they're different things. The audio track and the virtual MIDI track are different things. Okay, well, that's that for now. So just a quick recap. So you should know how to create a session from the dashboard, how to name it, how to be aware of its location on your computer. You should have a sense of the file structure that Pro Tools creates for you. You should know how to insert a MIDI instrument track, or as it says in the drop-down list, an instrument track. You should know how to create an audio track. You should know how to save your session, and you should know how to switch between the mix window and the edit window. And we will discuss further how to actually record audio, that I demonstrate a little bit here, but we'll discuss that more in depth later, and also how to record MIDI data into a virtual instrument track. All right, until next time, have fun.